We have all this money sloshing around the system looking for problems to solve that don't need to be solved, but solutions are supposed to come to problems, and we have a big problem. We have a big problem that we rely on a groundhog to come out and tell us the weather. Oh, wait, that was a story from before. We wait for one man to emerge and tell us what the economy is going to do. It's just as insane. However, he does have more control over the economy than a groundhog has over the weather, because he does control the money. What they control is the price of money. And this is an important piece to understand. If you have any grasp of history and economics, maybe you don't. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't teach this stuff anymore. But if you have any understanding of history and economics, you would know that price fixing doesn't work. As a matter of fact, it's been tried numerous times, and every single time it's failed disastrously. The reason why is because we do things, humans do things because we're incentivized to do things. We're motivated to do things because of the incentives. And typically you would start a business to make money, to make a profit. So if I'm going to make bread at my bakery and sell you bread, I'm hoping to turn a profit. I have to buy the raw goods. I have to spend time, energy, pay people to do that. I have to pay for my equipment, my building, etc. I have all these costs, and I hope to pay for all of my expenses by selling the bread and have some left over. That's my profit. But what happens if the government sets the price of that bread, and that price of the bread, now I'm not able to make a profit? Well, what would happen? Well, then I certainly wouldn't be making bread anymore. And that's exactly what happens every single time. It leads to massive shortages. It leads to massive distortions. They could also set the price of bread artificially high. So what would happen if they said, right now, the average price of bread is, I don't know, call it $5 a loaf. The government comes out and says, you can't sell bread for more than $3 a loaf. Well, a lot of people can't sell bread at that price. Their costs are too expensive. Their costs of their employees, their office, their equipment, et cetera, is too high. The raw materials, wheat's very expensive today. So I can't make bread for $3 a loaf, so I just stop. Then it leads to shortages. Supply and demand. When you have less of the good and you have more demand, what happens? The price goes up. But the price can't go up because they've artificially set the price at $3. And so instead of the price going up to 6, 7, 8 like it should, it's stuck at 3, and people just don't make it. It leads to shortages. Now, it's equally as bad if they try to set it the opposite way. Let's say that the going price of bread is $5 a loaf, and they set it to $10 a loaf. Then what would happen? Well, if the Fed's going to buy all the bread they want at $10, well, imagine how much more bread would be being made. So all these bread makers who can sell for $5 a loaf, they're getting rich. They're loving it. Now we're getting way more people jumping into the bread making business. So now we have more competition, and more people are shifting their businesses from making certain goods into making bread, because bread is now $10 a loaf. And so all these people that shifted from making other goods that were needed in the market have now stopped making those goods, and they go make the bread for $10 a loaf. But now we have all these shortages in another part of the market that's now being underserved, and we have all what's called malinvestment. And so now they're investing into new bread making facilities because they think there's more demand there. But the reality is there isn't more demand there. It's just the government has artificially set the price to that level. And at some point, the government goes, hang on, we can't keep paying $10 a loaf forever. That's kind of ridiculous. They stop, and now the whole system is messed up. Now, all these people had spent all this time, money, energy to change over their business to make bread, and now, because they thought there was demand, but it was artificial demand. And so now that collapses. We still have lost the other goods that they were making before the bread, and you can see how bad that is on either side. And so the answer to that is to don't set prices. The answer is to let the market decide. Let the market indicators, the market communicate where the demand is. So if less people want to eat bread, I don't eat bread. I don't believe bread's very healthy for you, so most people shouldn't. So we should have less demand for bread. And then eventually people make less bread, and they start shifting their businesses over to areas that do have demand. That would be the way that the market should work. The reason why I tell you that story is because the government, the Federal Reserve, the central banks, I should say that separately. The Federal Reserve and the government are not the same. The government is not the Federal Reserve. The Federal is neither federal, nor do they have any reserves. It's a semi-quasi-private partnership that the government has a little bit of influence over, but not a lot. That's a topic for another story, for another day. But you can hit me up on a comment if you'd like me to dig more into that. If you'd like to know more about that, read the book Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a pretty good primer. But I tell you that because what the Fed does is by raising the rates like they just did this week by 0.75%, is they adjust the price of money. And by fixing the price of money, it fixes the prices of everything else. So let me explain how that works. So most people don't think about this. You think that you use money to buy goods and services, which you do. So for example, I take $1,000 of my dollars and I can go buy an iPhone or $1,200 or whatever, $1,500, whatever the amount is. So I take $1,000 and I go buy an iPhone. But I have this iPhone in my hand right here. I could also go buy dollars with the iPhone, right? I could sell this iPhone for dollars. I'm buying dollars. So it's a two-way street. Trades work both ways. But let's say that I wanted to go buy a house and I needed $100,000 to buy a house. I don't have $100,000, so I need to go buy the $100,000 for the house. Now, how much does it cost me to buy $100,000? Well, that's the interest rate. The interest rate I pay is the cost of the money. And of course, that's what the Feds did. They adjusted the Fed funds rate by 0.75%. They made it more expensive. Money now is more expensive than it used to be. Well, why does that matter? Well, it matters because by setting the price of money, it sets the price of every other good and service. So I explained to you the danger of trying to set the price of a loaf of bread, not just in the way that affects bread, but affects the rest of the market, because all these people that were producing other goods and services now might go produce bread. And so we have all these extra add-on, knock-on effects, if you will, unintended consequences. So if we set the price of money, we literally set the price of every good and service in the industry. So let me explain how this works. The price of money is a signal that tells me all kinds of data that I don't have to know. I don't have to be an economist. I don't have to have a PhD, and I don't have to have a team of data scientists to go harvest data to tell me this. It's all summed up, trillions of inputs of all the aggregate demand, the consumer confidence, the production quality, all this data is summed up for me in one number, and that's the price of money.